My name is Regina Campbell, and I'm 27 years old. I live in a converted warehouse loft with light that arrives like a clean confession. Mornings spill through 12-foot windows and crawl across the exposed brick, and sometimes I think the sun is trying to turn the whole place into a photograph, proof that I'm here, that this is mine, that my grandmother's faith didn't go to waste. She left me the loft 3 years ago, a quiet inheritance no one argued about at the time. Back then, it was Regina's little artist cave. Even though I'm a software developer and the most artistic thing I do is let the kettle whistle before I pour. But the neighborhood suddenly got trendy. The exposed beams people used to call drafty became industrial chic, and my life started to look like a lifestyle blog I never applied to star in. My sister Tessa, 2 years younger and a storm front in soft sweaters, has always been the creative one. Paint in her hair, scaffolds of ideas, big words like installation and immersive. Our parents, Robert and Patricia, rehearsed supportive lines for her as if applause could get her into galleries. I used to admire their certainty that art would take care of Tessa if they took care of Tessa. I used to believe that certainty meant love. 2 weeks ago, Mom texted, "Family dinner, pot roast, your favorite. Pot roast is the red carpet of my family. They roll it out when they want something you won't like." After cheesecake, Dad folded his hands and said, "We need to talk about legacy." He said legacy, the way accountants say diversification, calm, premeditated. Mom squeezed my knuckles as if warming them up for what they should sign away. "Regina," she began, "honey, you work from home most days. You could set up in a closet and write the whole internet from there." She laughed like that was generous. "But your sister needs space, real space, to be an artist, a studio, a story." She looked around my living room as if it already belonged to Tessa's future. I waited for the part where they offered a compromise. Instead, Dad said, "We'd like you to move out. Not temporarily. Your grandmother wanted this family to flourish, and the best use of the loft right now is for Tessa's career." It was the word use, not home, not yours. Use, like my life was a tool bench. "Tessa can use it while I'm at work," I offered. "I'll clear hours. We'll schedule." Mom's eyes glistened, glass on the edge of a table. "Regina, you don't understand artistic momentum. It needs to look lived in, credible." She winced at credible like she'd said too much. "Credible to who?" I asked. "Collectors," Dad said quickly. "Galleries. There's interest. But she needs the right optics." Optics. Credible. I'm a developer. I recognize when people are optimizing a story. I told them no. Politely. Carefully. I even offered money to help Tessa rent a studio for a few months, the way you offer a Band-Aid when you suspect someone needs stitches. Mom's tears broke anyway, and Dad's disappointment settled like dust you can't quite wipe off. That night, Tessa called. With a voice I didn't recognize. Not angry. Urgent. "Regina, I need this," she whispered. "You don't get it, but I promise it will make sense soon, please." "What's going on?" I asked. "Why now? Why the loft?" She inhaled like the phone suddenly weighed more than she could hold. "I can't explain. Not yet." When she hung up, the silence felt rehearsed too. I told Liam, my boyfriend of 2 years, everything. He's the kind of person who takes notes when he's listening, even if the notes are only in his eyes. "It's not about the square footage," he said. "It's about making you a character in their story." He pressed his thumb to my wrist, counting the beats, anchoring me back to something simple. "What doesn't add up?" "The urgency," I said. "And Mom saying credible. Since when do we do PR for Tessa's process?" We made tea we didn't drink. The kettle cooled beside a pot of basil that refuses to die on my windowsill. I scrolled through Tessa's Instagram, a mood board of warm filters and captions about chaos as a medium. 127 followers, mostly family and friends. No website, no link in bio to anywhere that sold anything. A gallery once showed local artists in a coffee shop downtown. Tessa's pieces disappeared from their wall after a month. "Rotation," she'd said at the time. I woke before my alarm the next morning, the light already crawling across the floorboards like an invitation I didn't trust. I tried to code. My hands typed logic while my mind wrote doubt. By noon I had a plan. I would look. Not for dirt, just for sense. Tessa had mentioned galleries interested in her work. I called 3, speaking in the warm voice of a stranger who'd seen her paintings at a friend's place. 2 put me on hold. 1 laughed, not unkindly. None had heard of her. That night, Mom sent a message to the family chat about supporting dreams over selfish square footage. My Aunt Jennifer posted a status about property over people. I pinned both to the top of my brain so I wouldn't forget how cheaply people sell you at market when they don't have to look you in the eye. Tessa texted again. Please, Regina, I'm begging you. I stared at begging, remembering the last time she begged, when she was 6 and wanted to sleep with the lights on for a week after a thunderstorm. This time, the thunder felt indoors. Let's get her a studio, Liam said. One you pick. Neutral ground. We looked at listings together, ran numbers, found a bright room with skylights and cheap rent 2 train stops away. I sent the link to Tessa. She didn't reply. Instead, Dad called with the voice he uses when he's already decided. Your grandmother would be disgusted by this greed, he said. The sentence struck me less for its cruelty than for its choreography. He'd practiced it. After we hung up, I noticed the line Mom had used, credible, had started multiplying in my head. Credible art, credible process, credible income. It's a strange, lonely thing to feel your family's narrative trying to slide under your door like smoke. You can smell it before you can see it, and once you smell it, you can't unsmell it. I sat on the floor, back against the bed, and I thought about something I hadn't thought about in years. The day my grandmother gave me the spare key to the loft, pressed into my palm like a coin for a fairy. You don't owe anyone a life that isn't yours, she'd said, but you'll think you do. That's the trick. 2 days later, I walked into a tiny registrar's office at City Hall and asked for public business records. I told myself I was just trying to prove my paranoia wrong. I told myself I'd find Tessa Campbell Arts, LLC, and go home and apologize. Instead, an unrelated name snagged my eye, Morrison Creative Certifications, filed 18 months ago. The address was a P.O. box near Tessa's old apartment. I didn't know what it was yet. I only knew the word certifications doesn't belong anywhere near oil paints. On the train ride back, a woman across from me scrolled through an art blog. I didn't realize I'd leaned forward until she smiled and tilted the screen so I could see. Authenticity is the new currency, the headline said. I laughed, too loud. The woman flinched. That night, I fell asleep on the couch with my phone in my hand and a phrase looping through my skull like a screensaver. Optics and credibility. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a name I wasn't expecting. Ashley. We'd never met, but I knew who she was, Liam's ex. Their history is clean and grown up. They were more geography than heartbreak. She works, of course, in the art scene. Hey, her text read, this is weird, but can we talk? It's about Tessa, and something I should have connected sooner. I watched the 3 dots dance. They disappeared, then returned. I think I know why she needs your loft, and you're not going to like it. I didn't reply, not yet. I stared out at the city where everything looks honest from far enough away. I could feel the floor tilting, just a degree, just enough to make the objects in my life roll quietly to one side. The kettle whistled. I hadn't turned it on. Credible, Mom had said. Optics, Dad had said. Begging, Tessa had said. And in the gap between those words, something else was speaking. I just couldn't hear it clearly, yet. I woke the next morning with Ashley's message still glowing on my phone screen. Outside, the city was just beginning to breathe. Trucks unloading, pigeons testing the air, the sound of someone dragging metal across pavement. I brewed coffee and stared at my reflection in the window. The woman looking back wasn't a software developer anymore. She was a detective who hadn't meant to become one. Liam came by before work. He noticed the way I was holding the mug, tight enough to crack it. You didn't sleep, he said softly. No, I admitted. Ashley messaged me. That made him pause. Ashley? She says she knows why Tessa needs the loft. His eyebrows lifted, a careful question. She didn't explain, just said it was something I wouldn't like. He frowned. You think it's personal? About me? I shook my head. No, I think it's about my family. He studied me for a moment. Regina, if you start digging, I already did, I cut in, sliding my tablet across the table. The business registration for Morrison Creative Certifications glowed on the screen. He read the name slowly. That's not her art brand. No, and certifications doesn't belong in her vocabulary. Liam exhaled. Let's check it properly. So we did. By noon, I'd built a quiet, careful trail of searches, domain lookups, archived pages, posts that had been deleted but not gone. The website was sleek, sterile, and anonymous. Faux testimonials from graduates, credentials that looked legitimate until you read too closely. Fake diplomas, transcripts, portfolios for artists. Every file had one thing in common: a watermark shaped like a stylized M, the same brushstroke pattern Tessa once used in her signature. I sat back, heart pounding. "Oh my God," I whispered. "She's not just faking her success, she's selling it." Liam leaned over my shoulder. "These look real, like scarily real." "She's running a forgery business." I clicked through transaction codes hidden in the source. At least 40 orders, each between $3,000 and $8,000. My little sister was sitting on a federal crime, and my parents had been pushing me out of my home to make her lie look legitimate. A chill climbed up my spine. "The Loft," I murmured. "They wanted her to move in, so it looked like a real studio. If investigators ever checked, she could point and say, 'Look, I've been an artist all along.'" Liam looked grim. They were building her alibi. That evening, I drove to my parents' house. I told myself I'd keep it calm, just questions, no accusations. But calm doesn't survive in a house full of people rehearsing guilt. Mom opened the door with her warmest smile. "Regina, sweetheart, we were just talking about what?" I interrupted. "Tessa's new business?" Her smile froze. Dad's hand twitched against the armrest. "What are you talking about?" he said too fast. "I found Morrison Creative Certifications," I said. "It's hers. She's selling fake degrees and gallery documents." The silence was deafening. Mom's eyes darted to Dad's, then to the window. "You shouldn't have looked into that," he said finally. "You knew?" My voice cracked. "Tessa made mistakes," Mom said, her tone pleading. "But it's not what you think. She's committing fraud, Mom." "She's helping people," Mom snapped suddenly. "People who were rejected by the system. She gives them validation." "Validation?" I laughed, bitter and thin. "She's printing lies." Dad stood up, his calm voice like sandpaper. "Lower your voice, Regina. You don't understand the nuances of art and business. Sometimes perception is reality. That's what scammers say." Mom's lip trembled. "You always judge, don't you? Always so moral, so rigid. You think money is the only kind of crime. What about suffocating your sister's dreams?" I felt the air tighten around me. "You're helping her hide evidence, aren't you?" They didn't answer. They didn't have to. The way Dad looked at the floor told me enough. That night, Tessa called again. Her voice was thin, breaking. "Regina, I didn't want you to find out this way." "Then what way did you want?" "I never meant for it to go this far," she said quickly. "It started as a favor. Someone needed a diploma for an exhibition abroad, and I could design them. I thought it was harmless." "Harmless? You made up credentials, Tessa. They're just paper. Everyone lies in their resumes." "People lose jobs for lies like this," I said, my voice trembling. "People go to jail." She started to cry. "I just needed one break, one way to prove I'm not worthless." I almost softened until she added, "Mom and Dad said the Loft would fix everything." "They said that?" "Yes. They said if I lived there, it would make the story airtight. It would look authentic." My throat closed. "Authentic," I repeated. "So my life's supposed to be your camouflage." "Please," she whispered, "don't report me. Don't do this to us." "You already did it," I said quietly. "I'm just standing here watching." She hung up. Liam found me sitting on the floor again, laptop open, the fake certificates scrolling past like confessions. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "I don't know," I said. "If I report it, I ruin them. If I stay quiet, I become part of it." He knelt beside me. "You already know the answer. You're just hoping someone else will say it first." He was right. I spent the next day gathering evidence. Screenshots, invoices, cached emails. Every click felt like another stitch unraveling in the family fabric. That evening, Ashley finally called. "I'm sorry to reach out like this," she said. "But I think you should know. Tessa tried to sell one of my clients a fake degree last year. She used my name as a reference." My heart sank. "Your name?" She told them I'd vouch for her. I only found out when the gallery owner asked if I really worked with her on a piece for the Venice showcase. "And you didn't tell anyone?" "I didn't have proof then," Ashley said. "But now, I do." She sent me screenshots, messages, mock-ups, even a fake recommendation letter bearing her signature. "I was scared," Ashley admitted. "She said your parents were covering her, that you'd never believe me anyway." I exhaled shakily. Thank you. I believe you now. That night, I sat alone in my loft, the evidence stacked in a folder labeled Truth. The word looked too small for what it contained. Mom called twice. I didn't answer. Dad left a voicemail. Regina, don't make any rash decisions. We can fix this quietly. Quietly. They still thought this was a mess to be managed, not a crime to be confessed. I looked around my grandmother's loft, the exposed beams, the old brick, the soft hum of the city outside. This place was meant to be a legacy of honesty and independence. Now it was being used as a stage for deceit. I realized then that the choice was already made. Tomorrow I would give them one last chance to do the right thing before I did it for them. When dawn came, the city outside my window looked sterile and washed out, like it had been edited for someone else's movie. I didn't even taste my coffee. I just rehearsed one sentence in my head over and over. You have 24 hours to come clean. That was all I planned to say. No screaming, no pleading, no more performances of the understanding daughter. Liam offered to come with me. You shouldn't go alone, he said. I shook my head. If they see you, it'll turn into a distraction. They'll make it about you instead of this. He didn't argue. He just kissed my forehead and said quietly, then record everything. For yourself, not for proof. When I pulled up to my parents' house, the driveway looked deceptively calm. A robin was perched on the mailbox. My dad's old accounting journals still sat in a crate by the porch, the same crate he'd promised to digitize one day. I rang the bell once. My mother opened the door with that tired smile reserved for holidays and guilt. Regina, we were about to have breakfast, she said softly, as though normalcy could undo what I knew. Good, I replied, because we need to talk. We sat at the dining table, the one polished within an inch of its life, the one that had hosted decades of family meetings. Tessa was already there, eyes red-rimmed, picking at her nails. I placed my phone face up on the table, recording. You have 24 hours, I said. Dad frowned. For what? To turn yourselves in, I said. For fraud, for laundering, for everything. Mom gasped. Regina, I raised a hand. Don't. I'm not here to debate whether it's real. I have the screenshots, the bank transfers, the site backups, everything. You can either tell the authorities yourselves, or I will. Tessa whispered, You wouldn't. I already have a draft email to the FBI, I said quietly. All I have to do is hit send. The silence thickened until it felt like the air itself was waiting for someone to lie. Dad cleared his throat. You're misunderstanding the situation. Then explain it, I said. He adjusted his glasses like he was prepping a client presentation. What Tessa is doing isn't fraud, not exactly. She's offering what's called life experience equivalency. There's a legitimate market for alternative credentials. Fake MFAs? I snapped. Fake gallery listings? Fake accreditation websites? He didn't answer. Mom tried next. Her voice trembled, but the words were sharpened to wound. You're destroying your sister over paper, Regina, over things that don't hurt anyone. You've always had everything, the career, the stability. Let her have this one break. She's hurting people, I said. Teachers, artists, real graduates. Do you know one of her fake degrees got a woman fired from her college job? That woman's facing criminal charges. Tessa's lip quivered. I didn't know about that, she whispered. Didn't you? I asked softly. Because your email was on the certificate, Tessa. She started to cry. It wasn't supposed to go that far. It started as a joke. Someone said they'd pay for a mock diploma to impress a date, and then it just spiraled. You made over $300,000, I said. That's not a joke, that's a business. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Enough! Do you have any idea what you're doing? Reporting your own family? You'll destroy us. I'm not destroying you, I said, my voice shaking. I'm refusing to join you. That was when Ashley spoke. Until that moment, I hadn't realized she was sitting in the corner of the room. Tessa must have invited her, probably hoping to use her as a character witness. Ashley's expression was unreadable. But when she finally spoke, her tone was steady, almost clinical. Robert, Patricia, do you hear yourselves? You're gaslighting her while committing felonies. Mom stiffened. This doesn't concern you. It does, Ashley said. Tessa forged a letter in my name. She used me to sell fake credentials. Tessa's head snapped up. Ashley, please. No, Ashley said. You don't get to beg me for silence again. For a split second, no one moved. Then my mother broke the stillness with a sob that sounded rehearsed. This is madness, she cried. All this talk of fraud and prison. What kind of daughter turns her family into strangers? I met her eyes, the kind who still knows right from wrong. By the time the meeting ended, the walls felt smaller. Mom was crying into Dad's shoulder. Tessa had gone pale and silent, twisting a napkin until it tore in half. When I stood to leave, Dad followed me to the door. "Regina," he said quietly, "if you love this family, you'll delete that file." "If you love this family," I replied, "you wouldn't have built it on lies." I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. That night, Liam came over. I told him everything, the confrontation, the justifications, Ashley's outburst. He listened without interrupting, then said, "They won't turn themselves in." "I know." "So what happens tomorrow?" I pressed send. He nodded once. "Then I'll drive you there." The next morning, the sun came up slow and gold, the kind of morning my grandmother used to call a clean slate. I dressed quietly, packed the folder labeled Truth, and slipped it into my bag. Before leaving, I called my parents one last time. Mom answered on the second ring, her voice fragile. "Regina?" "I gave you a choice," I said. "You didn't take it." "Please," she whispered, "don't do this. We can make it disappear." "You already tried," I said softly. "You tried to make me disappear." And then I hung up. I met Liam outside. He didn't speak. He just handed me a coffee and drove. The city blurred past. The warehouses, the graffiti, the art galleries that Tessa had once dreamed of being in for real. We stopped in front of a dull gray building with FBI, field office printed on the door. I turned to Liam. "Once I walk in, nothing's going to be the same." He reached for my hand. "Then let it be different, Regina. Not broken, just honest." I stepped out of the car, the file under my arm, and walked inside. 4 hours later, I came out lighter, shaking, and empty. I'd handed over everything. The agent, a man named Special Agent Johnson, had listened carefully, taken notes, and said something that would haunt me for weeks. "You may have just stopped something much bigger than you realize." That night, I stared at my phone, watching the screen light up again and again. Calls from Mom, from Dad, from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Some pleaded, others threatened. I ignored them all. But one message, just one, made me stop scrolling. It was from Ashley. "They've started the investigation. I gave them my files too. You're not alone in this." I didn't cry until then. I sat on my loft floor, surrounded by the silence my family had left behind, and whispered to myself, this was supposed to be a home, not a crime scene. A week later, it happened. I was up before dawn when my phone began to buzz. First one alert, then another. A news headline flashed across the screen. "Local artist arrested in federal fraud case." The thumbnail photo was unmistakable. Tessa, handcuffed, being led out of her apartment building. My stomach dropped so fast I had to grab the counter to steady myself. Another alert followed. 2 more names added to the investigation, Robert and Patricia Campbell. My parents. There they were, standing on the front lawn in their robes as agents guided them toward a dark sedan. Mom's expression was frozen shock. Dad's looked strangely calm. The sound of the elevator doors opening downstairs made me jump, even though it was just the mailman making his rounds. Every noise that morning felt too loud, too final. Liam came running in with coffee and a newspaper already in his hand. "It's everywhere," he said softly. "They're saying the operation ran across multiple states, over 50 fake degrees sold." I stared at the article, the words blurring. "It's worse than I thought," he nodded. "They're calling it one of the largest credential scams in the region." I couldn't speak. My throat felt full of stones. Later that day, Special Agent Johnson called. He thanked me for the information and confirmed that my evidence had filled crucial gaps in the case. They were working with an overseas partner, he said, setting up fake accreditation websites. "We've identified at least 3 corporate clients who unknowingly hired consultants using those forged credentials." He paused. "If you hadn't come forward, Ms. Campbell, people could have been seriously hurt. You did the right thing." I thanked him, but when the call ended, I didn't feel heroic. I just felt hollow. The following weeks unfolded like a slow-motion disaster. Tessa was charged with wire fraud, mail fraud, and conspiracies to commit fraud. Each fake degree counted as a separate offense. My father faced conspiracy and money laundering, with additional charges for structuring transactions to hide income. My mother was charged with conspiracy to obstruct justice for helping destroy evidence. Neighbors whispered, Relatives texted in furious disbelief. Aunt Jennifer posted online that I had betrayed blood. My cousin Michelle called me a traitor with a conscience complex. But others, quietly, privately, reached out to say they understood. One message stood out. It was from Ashley. I've been cooperating too. Turns out there's more than anyone realized. Your sister used a fake client roster that matched real galleries. She even listed one that had a contract with my firm. That's how I first caught on. I didn't know whether to thank her or apologize for everything she'd been dragged into. She just wrote back, "Don't apologize. You saved lives, Regina, maybe even mine." When the trials came, I didn't attend every session. I couldn't. But I went to the sentencing. Tessa stood before the judge in a beige suit 2 sizes too big, her hair pulled into a tight knot that made her look younger than she was. When asked if she had anything to say, her voice cracked. "I never meant to hurt anyone," she said. "It started as a joke, but I got addicted to people believing I was someone important." Then she turned toward me, sitting quietly in the back row. "I'm sorry, Regina." Her plea deal reduced her sentence to 8 years in federal prison and 3 years of supervised release. She was ordered to repay $342,000 in restitution. My father received 3 years for money laundering. My mother got 18 months, 6 in a low-security facility, the rest under probation. When the gavel fell, I didn't cry. I felt like I'd been emptied out long ago. For months, I couldn't walk into my loft without hearing echoes of their voices, Dad talking about legacy, Mom crying about support, Tessa promising, "It'll make sense soon." But one afternoon, while I was pacing through that same hollow space, a new thought arrived quietly. What if I turned their lie into something true? That evening, I called Liam. What if we used the loft for what it was supposed to be, an art studio, but for real artists? He smiled. You mean, give it to people who actually need it? Exactly. No fraud, no pretense, just raw, honest talent. That's how the Loft project began. At first, it was just me, Liam, and a single post on a local college bulletin board. Free exhibition space for emerging artists. No fees, no commissions, just truth. The first applicant was Marcus, a photography student with a series about urban decay. On opening night, he sold 3 prints. He cried on the floor, saying no one had ever called his work real before. Then came Elena, a sculptor who worked with recycled materials. A collector bought her centerpiece for $5,000. But the most powerful exhibition came a few months later, from Ashley. She'd taken a break from the art world after the scandal, but when I invited her to showcase her own work, she hesitated and finally said yes. Her show was called Beautiful Deceptions, abstract paintings that change depending on the viewing angle. Every piece sold out. She donated part of the proceeds to a fund for fraud victims. When she hugged me afterwards, she whispered, "Your family's lie made room for real art. Maybe that's the redemption." Letters started coming in after that. One from my father, written on yellow paper. "Regina, prison is not what I expected. I'm teaching accounting classes here. I think I finally understand what integrity costs. You were right to do what you did. Your grandmother would be proud." Another came from Tessa. "I joined an art class here. They give us pencils, paper, and 1 hour of light. I'm learning how to draw again. Not for money, just for me. I think this is the first real art I've ever made." And one from Mom, shorter than the rest. "I'm in therapy now. I'm sorry it took losing everything to realize how wrong I was. I hope you'll let me earn your forgiveness one day." I read them all sitting by the same window where I'd first doubted everything. The sunlight was softer now, less intrusive. I whispered to myself, maybe some things have to fall apart to show what they were made of. By the end of that year, the Loft project had hosted 4 exhibitions and received a small grant from the City Arts Council. 3 other building owners reached out about starting similar spaces. Every time I unlock the door and step inside, I think of my grandmother. She wanted this place to stand for something honest. And somehow, after all the chaos, it finally does. I still miss my family. I still flinch when my phone rings with an unfamiliar number. But when I see a young artist hanging their first piece on these old brick walls, I remember what truth feels like: heavy, grounding, and alive. The loft that almost became a stage for fraud has become a home for authenticity. And maybe, just maybe, that's the kind of legacy worth keeping. It's been 3 months since the sentencing, and I'm finally breathing again. The city hums differently now, slower, kinder. I still live in the same loft, but it doesn't feel haunted anymore. The ghosts that used to linger in the corners, the words credible, legacy, family loyalty, have turned into echoes of lessons instead of wounds. I wake up every morning to the smell of coffee and paint, not guilt. The Loft project has grown faster than I ever imagined. Word spread through local schools and social media. Now there's a waiting list of students wanting to exhibit. Our last showcase, titled Authentic Voices, sold out on opening night. 10 young artists, none famous, none filtered, filled the room with color and truth. Some pieces were raw and unpolished, others quietly brilliant. Every one of them was real. As I walked through the crowd that evening, I heard someone say, "This place feels alive." That's when it hit me. The Loft wasn't just a building anymore. It was a second chance that kept multiplying. Marcus, the photography student from our first show, now works part-time as our gallery coordinator. Elena, the sculptor, teaches recycled art workshops for kids on Saturdays. And Ashley, Liam's ex, my unexpected ally, has become our curator and co-director. The first time Ashley and I worked together, I was nervous. Her presence used to remind me of everything complicated: my boyfriend's past, my sister's fraud, my family's shame. But she handled every interaction with calm professionalism and quiet compassion. One night after we closed up, she said, "Funny, isn't it? Your sister tried to fake art's worth, and now we're surrounded by the real thing." I smiled. Maybe truth was hiding in the same place the lie started. She nodded. Or maybe you just made space for it. A week later, I got a letter in the mail with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly. "Dear Regina, I heard about the Loft project. Someone here showed me an article about it. The pictures made me cry, not because of what I lost, but because of what you built. I don't expect forgiveness, but if you ever let me, when I'm out, I'd like to help. Maybe sweep floors, hang lights, anything that reminds me what real work feels like. Love, Tessa." I read it 3 times before I could breathe properly. For the first time, her words didn't sound like manipulation. They sounded like truth. My father writes too, every month, always on yellow legal paper. He tells me about the finance classes he teaches other inmates, how he's saving a little money from the prison library job to donate to the Loft project. His last line never changes. "Your grandmother was right about you." Mom hasn't written yet, but my Aunt Linda, Mom's older sister, calls occasionally. She says therapy is changing her, that Mom finally admits what she became. "When she's ready," Linda told me, "she'll write you an apology without excuses." I hope she does, not because I need it to move on, but because I want her to know that I did. Last week, something unexpected happened. A letter from Sandra, the art teacher who lost her job because of one of Tessa's fake degrees. Her college had reviewed her case after the investigation closed. They cleared her name and offered her a new position, adjunct professor of art history. She came by the Loft with her 10-year-old daughter, Emma, to thank me in person. While we talked, Emma wandered around the exhibit, tracing the air in front of a painting with her fingers. After a few minutes, she turned to her mom. "Can I bring my sketchbook next time?" she asked. "I want to draw what I see." Sandra's eyes filled with tears. "Of course, honey." Then she looked at me. "You have no idea what this means. For both of us." That evening, I added a new line to the Loft Project's mission statement, where truth inspires the next generation. We've already planned a youth program. Free art classes every Saturday taught by our featured artists. Sandra volunteered to teach art history. Sometimes, late at night, I stand in the middle of the loft and listen. The air hums with the low buzz of fluorescent lights and the faint echo of footsteps upstairs. But underneath it all, there's something else. A pulse. The sound of truth rebuilding itself, one small moment at a time. Liam wraps his arms around me and rests his chin on my shoulder. "You know," he says, "your grandmother didn't just leave you a place to live. She left you a place to grow." I nod, and maybe to heal too. We watch as Marcus and Ashley rearrange canvases for the next show, laughing about paint stains and crooked frames. Through the tall windows, the skyline glows with honest light, the kind that doesn't need filters or fake credentials to be beautiful. I think about everything that's happened, the betrayals, the courtroom, the lies, the guilt, the grief, and how, in a strange way, it all led here, to this loft, to this truth, to this peace. When I lock up for the night, I touch the key that once belonged to my grandmother, the same one she pressed into my hand years ago. "You don't owe anyone a life that isn't yours," she'd said. "But you'll think you do. That's the trick." Now I finally understand. Sometimes you have to lose everything built on falsehood to discover what's real. And when you rebuild, if you do it with honesty, what you create will outshine any illusion. The space that almost became a cover story for fraud has become a home for truth. And while my old family may never fully mend, I've built a new one out of artists, friends, and second chances. That's my story, not the one I wanted to tell, but the one I lived. And despite everything, I'm grateful for where it led.